Before you're seated, raise your right hand. You swear or affirm the evidence you're going to provide in hearing this case is going to be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
Thank you so much. Please be seated. Give your attention there to Ms. Hart.
I need you to introduce yourself to the jurors for me, please.
I'm Dana Wilder-Giddons.
And Ms. Giddens, did you know Tara Grinstead?
I did.
How did you know Tara?
I knew Tara through the pageant world.
Now, when you say through the pageant world, I want to take you back to 2005. How old were you in October of 2005?
I was 16.
And where did you attend school?
Irwin County High School.
Did you ever have Ms. Grinstead as a teacher?
I did not.
So tell us what you mean when you say you knew her through the pageant world.
Tara did. She was the director of the Miss Red and Black pageant, and at my freshman year, she was the director. And after that pageant, she took me under her wing, and she started coaching me for pageantry, doing my hair and makeup for pageants, homecoming, prom, anything that I needed like that.
So direct your attention specifically to October 22nd of 2005. Did you see Tara Grinstead on that day?
I did.
And where was it that you saw Tara initially that day?
At her house.
About what time did you arrive at Tara's home that day?
I would say between 9:30, 10:30.
Can you tell the jury what was going on that morning when you arrived at her house?
That morning, we had all of the girls had interviews, and then after the interviews, we came back and we would get our hair and makeup done by Tara.
Okay. So you've referenced interviews. For those who may not be familiar with the pageant world, can you tell them what you mean by you had interviews that morning?
In the morning of a pageant, you have interviews as part of the portion of the pageant. We would go and get interviewed by 3 judges, and then after that, we would go and get on stage, and they would judge us based on our beauty.
When you arrived at Ms. Grinstead's home that morning, had you already gone to your interview?
I had.
And when you arrived there, was Ms. Grinstead there?
Yes.
Was anyone else present?
Some of the other girls had made it before I did.
Okay. And tell us what happened when you arrived at Ms. Grinstead's residence that morning.
Normally, on a pageant day, we just go to her house. We just start taking rotations on girls to get their hair and makeup done. She would ask us how the interviews went that day, things like that. So we were just rotating around.
Had you been to Ms. Grinstead's home before that date on October 22nd, 2005?
Yes.
How many times would you say you've been to her residence?
I would say 10 to 20 times by then.
Opposing counsel has been marked State's Exhibits 4 and 5. May I approach the witness?
Sure.
I'm going to show you first what's been marked as State's Exhibit 4 for purposes of the record. Do you recognize what's depicted in State's 4?
I do.
What is depicted in State's 4?
That's Tara Grinstead's house.
And is that the residence that you went to on October 22nd, 2005?
It was.
Is that the same residence that you indicated you had been to, I think you said 20 times before?
It is.
And I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 5 and ask you to take a look at that for me and tell me if you recognize what's depicted in State's 5.
And that's Tara's house, the inside of her house.
Now, to be clear, did you draw the diagram in State's 5?
I did not.
However, looking at it, does that appear to be a true and accurate depiction of what her residence looks like on October 22nd, 2005?
It does.
And also, as to State's 4, again, is that a true and accurate depiction of what the residence looked like on October 22nd, 2005?
It does.
All right, this time I would tender in evidence State's Exhibits 4 and 5.
All right, any objection or board hours to those exhibits? No. All right, thank you. So the admitted without objection, States 4 and 5.
I believe that should have turned on the monitors. I'm going to show first what has been, thank you, tendered as States 4. Can you describe for the jury what they're seeing in States 4, please?
That's Tara Grinstead's house.
Okay. And the vehicle that we see parked in that picture, do you recognize that vehicle?
That's her vehicle.
That was her vehicle?
Yes, ma'am.
And were you how many times had you seen that particular vehicle prior to October 22nd, 2005?
Numerous times.
And was her car there that day when you got there?
It was.
Now, was there one or more than one entrance to her residence?
There was two. There was a front door and a back door.
Okay. Now, the back door, did it actually go into the back of the house itself?
No. I mean, I've never used the back door. Anytime I used it was the front door.
So that was kind of what I was getting at. The front door, do you see that depicted here in States 4?
I do.
And where is that in relationship to the vehicle?
Looking at the picture, the vehicle's on the left side of the door.
Okay. And then I'm going to show you what's been admitted as States 5. That's going to be upside down. Again, can you indicate to the jury what they're seeing in States 5?
That's the layout of Tara Grinstead's house.
Just a moment. I'm not sure why it's crooked. There you go. So, in relationship to, I guess, first of all, where's the front door? I think it'd be easier, Judge. May we have the witness step down here so she can indicate? You don't mind stepping down here for me now? Can I get you to point to where the front door is on States 5?
Yes, it's right here.
Okay. And when you entered in the front door, what room were you in?
Like her living den area.
Okay. And then which of these bedrooms would have been her bedroom?
The one with the bed.
Right there, okay. And,
I'm sorry, the one with the bigger bed since there's two beds on here.
okay. So this other room, do you know what she used it for?
It was more of like a storage room. It had a lot of porcelain dolls and things like that in there.
Okay.
Can y'all hear the testimony when she's back here? Thank you.
You can have a seat for me. Thank you, ma'am. Show you, ma'am, to the United States Exhibit 6 through 20 and ask you to take a look at each of those for me, please. Let me know when you're done. Having looked at States 6 through 20, do you recognize what those depict?
Tara's house. The inside of Tara's house.
I apologize. I know what were you saying?
The inside of Tara's house.
And are each of those true and accurate depiction of the residence as it was on October 22nd, 2005 when you last saw it?
Yes.
At this time, I will tender an evidence States Exhibit 6 through 20.
All right, any objection of board items to those of you? Thank you, Mr. Smith. Those be admitted without objection, states 6 through 20.
Thank you. And may I display those to the jury?
Yes.
Looking first at States Exhibit 6, can you tell the jury what they're looking at there?
That's the front of Tara's house. You can see her car and the door open.
Okay. And this particular door, is that the main door that you were referencing earlier?
It is.
when you were visiting in her residence, did you ever go in and out any other door?
I did not.
And then State's Exhibit 7. You tell us what we're looking at there.
That's her living den area. As soon as you walk in the door, that's where you're at in her house.
Okay. State's Exhibit 8. What are we looking at there?
Still part of her living and den area.
Okay. And the door that we see going in State's Exhibit 8, what room would that be going into?
You're going into her kitchen area.
And then State's Exhibit 9, it's just a little bit of a closer view. But again, what room is this that we see in the background?
Her kitchen area.
State's Exhibit 10, can you tell us what we're looking at there?
The inside of her kitchen.
State's Exhibit 11, what's depicted there?
Still part of her kitchen area.
Okay. And again, is this consistent with what her kitchen area looked like on that date?
It is.
Do you see this sort of bin here that's on the table? Do you recognize that?
Hot glue gun.
Okay. Have you ever seen Tara use a hot glue gun?
Yes.
And what capacity would she have been using a hot glue gun in your presence?
That particular day, we had one of the pageant girls who had a shorter length dress and she needed lower shoes. So that day, Tara bedazzled some of her shoes for the pageant.
And when you say her shoes, were they Tara's shoes or the girl's shoes?
The contestants' shoes.
Okay. And then State's Exhibit 12, what are we looking at there?
Still her kitchen area.
Do you know what this door went to?
Her back. That was her back door.
Okay. Do you know if that went to another portion of the house or?
I do not. I never used that door.
It's fine. I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 13 and ask you, do you recognize that?
I do.
Now, where is State's 13 pictured? Where does that appear to have been taken?
On her dining room table.
Do you recognize what is actually depicted in State's 13?
Mm-hmm.
What would that have been?
That's the booklet you get at the pageant that lets you know which contestants are in the pageant and the lineup of the pageant.
Okay. And to your knowledge, would this have been from the pageant that you were preparing for that day?
It was.
Okay. Do you know if this is something that she would have gotten before or after or when she attended the pageant?
You get it when you attend the pageant.
And then State's Exhibit 14. You tell us what we're looking at there, please.
That's the hallway of her house. You can see the room directly in front of you. It's like her little guest room, I would assume you would call it. It's where she would do a lot of storage. To the left is her restroom, and to the right was her bedroom.
Where is the living room kitchen area in relation to this hallway?
Well, that hallway is still in the kitchen area. So technically you're in the kitchen, but if you look to the right is her living den area.
Okay, thank you. And then State's 15, what are we looking at there?
That's her guest room, more of a storage room for her.
Okay. Here in State's 15, have you ever seen Tara use that?
I have not.
Okay. Now, had you ever used Tara's computer that's depicted here?
I did not.
I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 16 and ask you if you recognize what's depicted there.
I do.
What is depicted in State 16?
That's just another closet with purses, and then you can see her porcelain dolls on the left.
And then State 17, what are we looking at here?
Still the guest room area.
Now, you mentioned earlier that she had dolls, and I know you mentioned a couple of times. Do you see those depicted in this picture?
I do.
Okay. And to your knowledge, is that where she kept all of her dolls that she collected?
Yes.
I'm going to show you States 18. Do you recognize what's depicted there?
That was Tara's restroom.
Okay. And did this residence have one or more than one restroom?
Just one.
Now, do you recall seeing Tara use this item that's in the sink on the day that you were there?
I don't. She used more of a curling iron, but we were all in the kitchen area, so we didn't do anything in the restroom.
Okay, so then when you say we were all in the kitchen area, tell us what you mean by that.
Whenever Tara did our hair and makeup, we would always get it done in the kitchen area. It was a little bit bigger and more room for the girls.
I'm going to show you then what's been marked in Internet States Exhibit 19. Again, can you tell us what we're looking at there?
Her restroom, bathroom.
And then finally, Stage 20. Can you tell us what we're looking at there, please?
Her kitchen sink.
Is that her kitchen sink?
Oh, I'm sorry, her restroom sink. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Going back to the kitchen, these pictures. You mentioned earlier that she was doing your hair in the kitchen. I'm going to go back to Stage 10. And I know it may be hard to see on the screen, but do you see this item right there? Are you able to tell what that is? If not, I can approach with a picture and let you see it.
It appears to be a curling iron.
Okay. And again, would that have been consistent with what y'all were doing that day?
Yes.
Okay. So now that we have an idea of what the residence looked like, can you tell us about how long you were at this residence that day?
Between 9:30, 10:30 to almost 2, probably.
Okay. And during that time, did it take you that long to get dressed yourself, or what were you doing?
No, we would always just kind of hang out. We didn't have much to do after interviews anyways. So the girls and her, we would hang out, talk about our interviews. It took us a little while anyways to get our hair and makeup done. You're thinking about 45 minutes to an hour with each girl. So rotating it around, it did take a little while.
After you left Tara's residence that day, did you ever see her again?
I did,
Where was it that you saw her?
at the pageant.
Prior to seeing her at the pageant, did you ever return to her home?
I did.
Can you tell us about why you returned to her home that day?
That day, Tara had let me borrow a pair of dangly earrings. At that point, my pageant dress was a black velvet sweetheart neckline, and we wanted to try the dangly earrings with it. However, after going home, trying the dress on with hair and makeup, I did not like those earrings. So I proceeded to go back to her house to get the earrings that I always used for the pageant.
Now, was Tara present when you went into her residence that afternoon?
She was not.
Do you know about what time of day it was that she returned to her residence?
It had to have been between 3 and 4,
What time did the pageant begin that evening?
around 5.
And what time were contestants to arrive at the pageant?
As long as you were there by 5.
Now, was anyone else in the house when you arrived there that afternoon?
They were not.
And were you able to find some earrings you were going to use?
I did.
And where were those earrings located?
In her bedroom.
So, did anyone else go with you into that room?
They did not.
Did anyone else go with you into the home?
They did not.
This show opposing counsel the Mark States Exhibits 21 through 34.
I'm good. Thank you, though.
I'm going to show you states 21 through 34. I ask you to take a look at each of those, and when you've had a chance to look at them, let me know.
I do.
What is depicted in those exhibits?
That's Tara's bedroom.
And again, is that a true and accurate depiction of what her bedroom would have looked like back on October 22nd, 2005?
No.
So, what is different in those pictures than what you recall when you went back to her house that afternoon?
Some of the drawers are out, and her bed is unmade.
Okay. With the exception of those things, do the pictures accurately demonstrate the house or the room itself?
For the most part, yes.
Okay. So then let's go through each of those specifically. I do, Judge. I'm going to ask her a couple more questions over the foundation. State's Exhibit 21 specifically, does that appear to be the room as it was on October 22nd, 2005 when you returned?
It does not.
What is specifically different in this picture?
In that picture, the drawers are pulled out, and there's clothes laying on the floor.
Okay. With the exception of those things, is the room in the same condition as when you last saw it?
This part of the room, yes.
Okay. States 22, can you tell us, does that appear to be in the same condition as when you last saw it?
No. Once again, there's things on the floor, and you can tell the bed is unmade.
Other than the bed being unmade and the things on the floor, again, is that a true and accurate representation of what her bedroom looked like when you last saw it on October 22nd?
Yes.
States 23, same question. Other than the drawers being pulled out and the things on the floor, is that, and the bed, as you've mentioned, is that a true depiction of what the bedroom looked like on October 22nd, 2005 when you first saw it? Or when you last saw it?
Other than those things, and just, once again, all the clothes on the floor and things like that.
States 24, is that a true and accurate depiction of what it looks like on that date?
No.
What is different?
Her bed is unmade. There's clothes on the bed. When I had returned, her bed was made.
Okay. With the exception of those things, is this a true and accurate depiction of what her bedroom overall looked like back in October of 2005?
Yes.
It states Exhibit 25, same question, other than the bed being unmade and the other things you've noted, is that what the bedroom appeared like in October of 2005?
The chest looks like it appears it has been moved.
Okay.
It was normally in the middle of the bed.
Okay.
That's
States Exhibit 26, same question. Is that what the bedroom would have looked like on October 22nd, 2005 when you last saw it?
There was less clothes on the little chair right there,
Okay.
but overall.
And then I'm going to ask you the same question, states 27, 28, 29. (32, 33, and 34). Other than the things you previously noted that are different, does the room appear to be in the same condition as when you last saw it?
There appears to be a few more shoes out, but other than that.
Okay. However, again, is this a true depiction of overall what her room looked like on that date?
Yes.
And then finally, as to these specific items, that being States 30, do you recognize what's depicted in States 30?
Yes, those are the shoes that Tara wore that day of the pageant.
Okay. And other than the shoes and the other items that you've already discussed, is that a true and accurate depiction of that area of her room when you last saw it?
Well, there looks to be bras on the ground, and I didn't see those.
Okay. And then
What on the ground?
Bras, some of her.
States Exhibit 31, do you recognize what's depicted in States 31?
Yes, that appears to be the shirt that she wore along with the pants that she wore to the pageant that night.
Okay. And other than the things we've already discussed and those items being there, again, overall, is that the depiction of what her room would have looked like back in October 2005?
Yes.
Your Honor, this time I would tender those exhibits into evidence.
All right, that is 21 through 34, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Merchant, any objection? Thank you. Those are admitted without objection.
So let's look at those and discuss some of the differences. Sorry. that, I'm going to look back at States 5. You see that in front of you, ma'am?
I can.
You mentioned earlier that there was a guest bedroom and her bedroom. The pictures that you've just been looking at, which room would those have been?
Her bedroom.
So I believe you identified that previously as this front bedroom?
I did.
Okay. Let's start with States 28. What are we looking at in States 28?
That's the inside of Tara's room.
Okay. Is there anything in this picture that is particularly different than what you recall seeing on October 22nd, 2005?
Her chest area, that chest or drawer area, some of her drawers, you can tell are out.
Okay. In the times that you had been, I think you said 20-something times to her house, had you ever been in her bedroom before?
Yes, to get a few things.
Generally, when you were in her bedroom, did you find that she was someone who closed her drawers or left them out?
Closed them.
I'm going to show you what's been tendered as States Exhibit 34. Again, can you tell us what we're looking at there and if there's anything different than what you recall from that date?
And that's still the inside of Tara's bedroom, and when I went in the second time, I didn't recall seeing any bras on the ground.
Okay. What about the jeans that we see here and the other items?
The jewelry items, yes, because she had used those to bedazzle the shoes that day. The blue jeans, I don't recall them being there.
Okay. And again, is this consistent with what you had seen of her bedroom in the times you had been present? As far as things being on the floor?
No, she normally kept it a little bit neater than that.
Okay. Then States 29, what are we looking at there?
It's still the inside of her bedroom.
Okay. The dresses that we see hanging on the back of the door, do you recall if those were there when you were in the bedroom on October 22nd, 2005 in the afternoon?
They were.
Again, States Exhibit 33, what is different in that picture from what you recall, if anything?
The drawers are pulled out.
States 32, is there anything different than what you recall?
The shoes on the floor.
Okay. Are you able to tell what this item is?
It looks like a candle.
Okay. Do you recall seeing that candle on the floor when you were there October 22nd, 2005 in the afternoon?
I don't recall.
Looking at States Exhibit 26, can you tell us what, if anything, is different in this picture from what you saw when you went back to the residence on October 22nd?
Her bed is unmade, and the little chest down there,
This item?
yes,
Okay.
normally was in the middle of her bed.
Okay. Had you ever seen it at the corner of the bed like that?
I have not.
States 27, again, what, if anything, is different in that picture from what you recall?
The bed unmade, a few more of clothes being on the chair.
Okay. Then what about States 25?
Same thing, the clothes on the floor, the bed being unmade, the chest.
Now, the pillows that we see on the bed here, when you had seen the bed made, were those pillows on the bed?
Yes.
Were they mixed in with the comforter as we see here?
No.
A few more. States 24, again, I think that's just a close-up of what we're looking at, but is there anything specific that jumps out at you as different in this picture?
Just once again, the bed being unmade and the clothes being on the bed.
States 21, what angle are we looking at the bedroom from here?
That's going into her bedroom.
And where would the bed be in relationship to this picture?
The bed will be on the left.
Okay. Now, these shoes that we see on the floor here, would those have been on the floor when you were there October 22nd, 2005, when you went by?
They were not.
Okay. Have you ever seen those shoes before?
I had.
Just a couple of different angles of that. Stage 22, again, are those the same shoes that we're discussing?
Yes.
And then stage 23.
Yes.
And then I want to look at a much closer view, stage 30. Where had you seen those shoes before today?
She wore those particular shoes the night of the pageant.
And how do you recall that she wore those shoes the night of the pageant?
They were, I saw her that night.
Okay. And then what about stage 31, the clothing that we see specifically on top of the pile here? Do you recognize that clothing?
Yes.
How do you recognize that clothing?
That's what she wore that night.
Okay. So after you left her residence on October 22nd, 2005 with the earrings in tow, where did you go?
To the pageant.
And did you see Miss Grinstead at the pageant?
I did.
Where did you see her?
She actually sat with my parents at the pageant.
Did you ever speak with her at the pageant?
I did.
And don't tell us anything she said, but where were you when you spoke with her?
It was after the pageant was over, and I just escorted her out to her car.
Okay. At that point, was she alone?
Yes.
Do you recall sitting here and she had a purse with her?
Yes.
And I know it's been a number of years, but do you recall sitting here what that purse looked like?
It was a beige purse, brown.
And do you recall back then if Miss Grinstead had a cell phone?
She did.
Did you have that cell phone number?
I did.
Had you ever spoken with her on that cell phone?
Yes.
What about, do you know if she had a house phone?
She did.
Had you ever spoken with her on that house phone?
It was more of the cell phone.
More of the cell phone. Okay. And I'm going to show Patient Counsel for Market States Exhibit 2. I'm going to show you what's been Market States Exhibit 2 and ask you if you recognize that.
I do.
How do you recognize that?
That was what Tara wore the night of the pageant.
Okay. Now, this particular States Exhibit 2, the other person who's depicted there, is that you?
It is not.
However, is that someone who was also in the pageant with you?
Yes.
And is that a true and accurate depiction of what Miss Grinstead looked like the last time you saw her, October 22nd, 2005?
It is.
Now, at this time, I would tender to evidence States Exhibit 2.
Objection, State Street.
In addition to our previous.
Thank you, that's admitted.
May I publish that to the jury?
Sure.
It's a little dark, but can you tell us what we're looking at in States 2?
That is Tara Grinstead the night of the pageant, as well as one of the pageant contestants.
Okay. Now, and again, I know it's dark, but in the item that we see here in her hand, do you know what that is?
That appears to be her jacket.
Okay. And do you recall, as you said, she had a purse as well that evening?
Yes.
Do you see the purse in this picture?
It's kind of hard to see, but I'm pretty for sure she had the purse in her hand and the jacket on top of it.
Okay. I'm going to show you the previously marked as States Exhibit 3. Please don't display these necessarily to everyone else, but I'm going to ask you to take a look at them yourself. Can you tell me if you recognize those items that were taken out of state storage?
I do.
How do you recognize those?
Those are the items that she wore that night of the pageant.
And do those appear to be the actual clothing items that Ms. Grinstead wore on the last night you saw her?
They are.
Your Honor, for records purposes,
Again, there are other items. So what we have done is the vest will be 3A, the coat is 3B, the camisole is 3C, and the necklace is 3D.
All right, you tender those
I will
items.
be tendering those to the police.
Mr. Merchant, any objection to 3A, B, and C? Those are admitted without objection. Thank you.
And again, are each of these items that you saw Ms. Grinstead wearing on that date?
Yes.
And are each of these items that you saw Ms. Grinstead wearing, that we see Ms. Grinstead wearing in that picture?
Yes.
Thank you.
After Ms. Grinstead left the pageant that evening, did you ever speak with her again?
I did not.
I don't want you to tell me what anyone else told you, but when did you learn that Ms. Grinstead had been reported missing?
Monday afternoon.
And would that have been, what day was the pageant on?
Saturday.
And so would that have been the 2 days later?
Yes.
Did you ever have Ms. Grinstead as a teacher?
I did not.
Now, in this particular case, well, you never had as a teacher, let me ask you, were you familiar with, if she taught at the same school where you went?
She did.
And do you know the defendant in this case, Ryan Duke?
I do not.
Did you know of him or ever see him at the school that you attended?
I did not.
To your knowledge, did you ever see Ryan Duke in the presence of Tara Grinstead?
I did not.
What about Bo Dukes? Did you know Mr. Bo Dukes?
I do not.
Had you ever heard of Mr. Bo Dukes prior to the arrest of the two defendants in 2017?
I have not.
Have you ever seen Bo Dukes in the presence of Tara Grinstead?
I did not.
What was Ms. Grinstead's demeanor when you saw her on October 22nd, 2005?
She was in a great mood. It was a pageant day, so any days that we did pageantry, she was always in a great mood.
And just one judge. That's all the questions I have.
Okay, any cross-examination, Mr. Merchant? Ms. Moore, you put it.
Good morning, Ms. Giddons. My name is John Merchant. I'm one of the lawyers that represents Ryan Duke.
Hang on just a second, Mr. Merchant. See if you can figure it out. Thank you. All right, go ahead, Mr. Merchant.
So, Ms. Giddens, I believe you told us the last time that you saw the condition of Ms. Grinstead's room was about 3 or 4 o'clock on Saturday. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did you, and I assume you never reviewed it again after that, correct?
No.
And I assume you have no knowledge about what investigation was done on Monday morning with either folks you knew or law enforcement in your bedroom.
You're correct.
Can y'all hear Mr. Merchant's questions? If you'll speak up, Mr. Merchant, please. Thank you. I think we're having a hard time in the back.
Oh, I'm sorry, Judge. I'll try to speak up. Your Honor, may I approach?
Sure.
Ma'am, I've handed you what's been previously marked as Defendant's Exhibit 1. Do you recognize that?
That's her front door.
Okay. And can you tell the jury how many locks are on it?
It looks like 2 locks.
I'm going to object to testifying from the exhibit for its tender, and she indicates she's looking at it, not remembering.
Yeah, fair enough, Judge. My apologies. So, ma'am, you recognize that as being a photograph of Ms. Grinstead's front door?
Yes.
Does it appear to be a true and accurate description of the door?
As you remember it being in October of 2005,
Yes.
at this time the defense attorney defense exhibit 1.
All right, Ms. Hardy, any objection to D1?
No, Your Honor.
All right, that's admitted without objection. Defendants 1. Thank you.
So, ma'am, I think I asked you before how many locks were on the door. Can you repeat again what you said?
There appears to be 2.
And one of them is, appears to be a bolt type lock up top. Is that true?
Yes.
And based on your view of this and your experience in Ms. Grinstead's house, is this the type of lock that can open you lock from the inside?
Yes.
And on the inside door handle, can you tell us what's there?
The inside door handle? You mean the veil? Is that what you're talking about? Or the lock at the top?
On the lower lock band, does that appear to be a set of chimes?
Yes.
And the purpose of the chimes is to alert Ms. Grinstead when someone's opened the front door?
Yes.
And you have an independent memory of hearing the chimes when the door was open?
I do not.
As you sit here, do you have any personal knowledge about Ms. Grinstead's habit with regard to the upper lock?
I do not.
How about with regard to the car? Do you know her habits with regard to locking the car?
I do not.
So you don't know one way or the other whether she always locked her car?
Which she did.
So she did always lock her car?
Yes.
So when she was not in the car, she locked it?
Yes.
And that was her habit and routine?
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry.
Would it be unusual to learn that the car was unlocked?
It would be. That was precious to her.
Do you know Joe Portier, Dina Harper, or Larry Harper?
I do.
And did you have any knowledge whatsoever about what they did when they were inside the house on Monday?
I do not.
And that's true with the doors that were open inside of Ms. Grinstead's bedroom. Do you know one way or the other whether they opened?
I do not.
Speak up a little bit more, please, Mr. Murphy. Thank you.
My apologies. So the last thing I want to ask you about, ma'am, was Anthony Vickers. Does that name sound familiar to you?
It does.
Are you aware of an incident involving Mr. Vickers coming to Ms. Grinstead's house?
Yes.
And that occurred in the springtime of 2005?
Yes.
Did she talk to you about that?
She did not.
Were you aware that she was scared of him?
She made no indication.
At this point, I would call for hearsay or speculation.
Yeah, I'll hear from you, Mr. Murphy.
Yeah, it goes to her state of mind under 8033, whether or not she was fearful of Mr. Vickers, and whether or not she talked to her about it, it would be admissible as an exception.
You get the last.
Your Honor, there's been no foundation to show when she had this conversation, how closely she had this conversation, when the event occurred. There's actually no indication that she heard it directly from Ms. Grinstead. She could have heard it from anyone else in the community.
I understood the witness testified she had never had any conversation concerning this topic. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
I sustain that objection.
Ma'am, so did you know Anthony Vickers personally?
I did.
Did you know others who knew him?
Yes.
So it was someone who knew in your circle of community or social network. You may not have known him personally, but it was among your character.
Yes.
And is it true that you believe that, in your words, he was a psycho?
I think he...
This is irrelevant to her opinion of Anthony Vickers again. That would not go towards what Ms. Grinstead believed in Mr. Vickers. It would go working with the girl.
I'll hear from
Mr. Vickers, this involves an incident where Ms. Grinstead filed a formal police report against Mr. Vickers for banging on the front door. So I think I'm entitled to ask her whether or not, in her personal opinion, she believed Mr. Vickers was a psycho.
She's indicated that she had no personal knowledge of it from Ms. Grinstead. The person who was there when that occurred is going to testify. We can certainly ask that person. But at this point, from what I can tell, she knows about it from hearsay and from town gossip.
I understood that the question was,
Is that correct? Is that what you understood? I'll allow that.
I don't think at that point he was making rash decisions.
In your words, what he was just saying.
I think at that point I had said those.
That's all.
All right, thank you. Any redirect, Ms. Hart?
Did you see Anthony Vickers on the evening of October 22nd, 2005?
I did not.
And again, the last time you saw Tara Grinstead on October 22nd, 2005, what was her demeanor?
She was happy.
No further questions.
You follow up, Mr. Merchant? All right, any reason Ms. Giddens shouldn't be excused
No, Your Honor, we ask you to excuse.
from the defense?
Yeah, she'd be excused.
Ms. Giddens, I'm going to excuse you at this time. You're welcome to stay, go, whatever you'd like to do. The only thing I'll ask is don't discuss the testimony you've given to this jury this morning with any other witness to the case until the case is concluded, okay?
Okay.
All right.